You're listening to 88.7 FM WRHU. Today, I'm joined by Lisanne Valentine to talk about her life, career development, and personal journey. So, first and foremost, would you share with us a little bit about your story? Where did you start? What was your career path? How did it change?
Well, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. Started out as a fifth grade teacher, became a civil defense litigator. While I was in the process of practicing law on Wall Street, I was very unhappy with my trajectory. And so I started acting to sort of find a new way to thrive within litigation. And then I fell in love with acting. While I was writing about that process and simultaneously deciding to leave the law, I ended up getting published in a New York Times bestselling book called Eat, Pray, Love Made Me Do It. And throughout that journey of acting and writing, I ended up becoming a spiritual coach because I'm a fifth generation intuitive healer. So I ended up getting certified in that so I could help other people pivot into their own purpose.
What inspired you to leave the legal profession and move to this acting and writing? Was it just general discontentment, or was there sort of like a defining moment for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think at different stages of our lives, we have these moments where our soul is calling us to something more. And the story I told myself was that I needed some type of armor to thrive in litigation, and I thought acting would help that. But the truth was, my soul had been like really stirring the whole time, telling me this isn't the way. These are great skills, but this is not meant to be your path. And listening to my intuition and writing through that process was what really actually helped me make those leaps because they were indeed leaps to leave like one career into something completely different.
So, something that intrigues me is this balance between sort of your intuitive healing, your life coaching, and then
Mhm.
the other sides of your career, like the acting and writing. So, how do you personally balance these two different facets of your kind of career?
I think in truth, there's no balance. There's harmony, kind of like a song, where the notes all play together. And so sometimes you'll hear a higher note, and other times you hear all bass, and it just depends, but it's all the same song. And so for intuition, in a really basic level, is linked to creativity, right? It's that inner voice inside of you. It can be much more. It could be as simple as that. And so when you're tapping into your creativity, that's why kids usually are really in tune with their environments because they're just so easily play. And so the more you hold on to play, for me anyway, the more I've held on to play, the more in tune I've had like the reception to my inner voice. And so that really has helped me navigate an acting career and being highly intuitive and coaching other people that are multi-hyphenates like me who have multiple passionate things they're like doing. So some of them are like hosts and they also are they speak on TED stages. Some are Emmy Award winners, but they're also dads. Like, so how do you navigate like those different outfits that we put on every day? It's through creativity, at least in my opinion, or intuition.
Another thing that kind of intrigues me is the difference between like life coaching and your intuitive healing and then sort of your acting and authoring. How do those two pieces sort of inform how you live your life?
Well, I'll say when I'm preparing for a part as an actor, I'm definitely tapping into my intuition. All actors have to do that. It's more instinct, right? You can use a different word. It's the same thing. And sort of leaning into how do I feel about this and really tuning into emotion when it comes to the performance piece. It's the same with writing. Of my intuition, I practice something called automatic writing. But people that are full-time writers will call it just like freestyle writing. It's the same. It's coming from the same place. You're not filtering yourself. So like you're not using your human mind to filter, edit, or try to create something other than what's wanting to flow through you. And so my intuitive healing is a part of that just because I meditate every morning. I work on myself with Reiki first, and then I allow myself to plan my day based on am I coaching today, am I auditioning today, am I writing today? And so they all play together. They really do. Because I think the more you allow yourself to take care of your human body and your inner world, it will affect everything that you put out in the world. So here's the thing. If I'm on stage performing, I'm affecting the people around me, whether I'm actively coaching them or not. Just like you walk by someone in a grocery store and you're not really in awareness of that exchange, but there's an exchange happening. So if you smile at someone, that energy is catching. You can catch it, right? Someone else might smile back. And so those aspects that we all take for granted, just because I'm certified to do it, doesn't mean that we all aren't doing that on some level. When we bring joy into a space, we bring healing into a space, whether that's your calling or not.
Something that you said within there, or you've kind of mentioned a little bit, is this intuition piece. What would you say to someone who's struggling to try and unlock that aspect for themselves?
I would say that it's a part of their makeup. Naturally, it's literally like if we were iPhones, it's in the settings. We just have to decide to turn it on. And so there's different ways you can do that. And so for me, writing is one of those ways. But if the person I'm talking to is not a writer, just getting in tune with the breath first, focusing on your breathing, practicing different types of breath work. So like just in for 4, hold for 4, release for 4, hold for 4, and repeat that pattern. Start getting used to what your body feels like. Then start getting used to what a yes or a no feels like in you. And you can easily play with that. Like let's say you, I don't know, you hold a pencil in your hand and you tell yourself, this is a pencil. And I'm affirming this is a pencil. There's no resistance in your physical body because it is a pencil. But if I'm holding a Sharpie and I say this is a pencil, I may have a different reaction in my body. So start paying attention to that, because your inner knowing comes from feeling on some level. Whether it's like, I just know this, or I feel a resistance in my body, my throat locks up, or my heart, pay attention to your physical body. That's the first way. Getting mindful really helps. Athletes are really mindful. They're really in tune with their bodies. They're really in tune with their intuition, even though they're not really actively calling it that.
What has been the most exciting and rewarding experience that you've had thus far in either your just your career or your larger life in general?
There's so many, but I think stepping out in this way, with my intuition as a spiritual coach, where I get to do all the things that I've sort of trained up until this time to do simultaneously in teaching this work with my writing, and just applying it with my acting and with other performers. I think because for so long I denied this aspect of me and my lineage. I didn't, I was such a rational thinker and decided that there was only one way to accomplish quote unquote successful life, until I got to redefine that based on what my heart was telling me. And that doesn't necessarily sit right with everyone, because many of us aren't told that that's how we can navigate this growing up thing, where we can be heart centered and lean into that. And so I think allowing myself, like my inner child screaming like a little Wonder Woman, like, yes, like, and I think it's that, it's leaning into the intuition, leaning into my spirituality, as the, I'm seeing like in my mind's eye, the Superman cloak that behind me. And I think that's the proudest, because if I lead with love with a capital L, I mean, that to me is complete success.
What is the takeaway that you'd offer? But the takeaway I'm kind of getting from it is just trust yourself, know yourself, and give yourself the space to be able to really think through how you feel and prioritize love overall.
Yes. And so, a real practical way to say that is, if you've set out on one trajectory in your life and career, and at some point you decide this doesn't look like me anymore, or this doesn't look like the person I'm becoming, and I think it's time to switch it, change it, just pivot, honor that, listen to that. There's no one way to do this life thing. And just because you decided one way doesn't mean you can't change your mind, decide another way on the path. You're always being led. Honor it, listen to it, live it loudly, and you won't regret it.
On the other kind of the end of the spectrum, has there been any instance where you've experienced like extreme adversity and sort of how did you overcome that?
I think we all overcome adversity. I don't think we get to, especially creatives, you don't get to do this thing if you're not navigating that on some level. And
Absolutely.
so, and I've learned from them, and they've been beautiful experiences. So I will say one of the more interesting aspects that may have felt adverse was in college, where I was like, I'm not going to become a writer. And then I was an English major. And my professors were like, "What do you mean you're not going to become a writer?" Like they were very sat down and talked to me like, "Why? Why are you not pursuing journalism?" Literally, I had a talk. And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm going to become a lawyer." And I'd also had a secondary major was education. And so I was like, "Oh, my backup was I'll become a teacher," which is not a backup either. You're a teacher by calling or not, right? And so I decided not to pursue teaching initially, and then I had that professor stop me, write me a letter and told me, "Why are you not teaching? I'm completely disappointed in you." And so it was sort of like these people that were my mentors were like, they were guiding me away from practicing law, and I was not hearing them. And so what was adverse was like, I want to do this thing, but they saw something bigger than I could imagine. And so now I can say that when I look back, even though I had resistance to it and I took a different path, all of the skills I learned as an attorney blended with my writing skills, blended with the way I teach now as a spiritual coach. And so those moments of like, why are you not supporting me? It really was just they were having a higher vision for me that I couldn't see yet. And what felt like maybe rejection on some level, because it was crushing. These were my mentors. It was actually something I could look back on and say, ah, you saw the path that I wasn't seeing. And so that's kind of like a surface level adverse thing. We could talk about so many things, but this is the morning. So I'm just trying to keep it as light as possible.
The next piece is perseverance, because obviously, based on this career path, I mean, you were a teacher, a lawyer, an actress, and you still are an actor, excuse me, an author, a life coach. How do you persevere through the lows that life sends at you?
My faith, having unshakable faith that I was guided this far and it's for a reason. Again, love with a capital L. And that's not an easy word for everyone to understand if they haven't experienced it like and they're human. They haven't experienced it with parents or family or friends, really. It can be a tough concept. So if there's a different word that supports that, like you understand joy or you understand fun or you understand adventure, then lean into those words and let them be replacements for that. If love doesn't feel like something that's a familiar, cozy blanket that you can wrap up yourself with at night, you know? And so if I have that as my foundation, then I know I can trust what the next step is. So here's an example. When I went into, I'm 44 now. When I started acting, I was 30. I have as many credits to my name as I am old now. That's not an easy feat. And I'm not saying it to boast. I'm saying like I'm acknowledging that woman who was 30 who decided to act later in life and actually became like the lead in several movies and got to be in some of her favorite TV shows. And it's possible. Also, if someone tells you you don't look a certain way, which I've been told that I wouldn't be able to achieve certain things, I didn't fit a certain type or mold. I got to just keep my head high and say, no, I'm doing this for a reason. So maybe you don't see it. So on the flip side, you have your mentors, right, on the, who saw what was possible. And then you're in an industry or multiple creative industries where other people don't see the vision that you hold. And that can be just as hard. And so you have to believe in yourself, which is what I tell myself every day still. Believe in myself so much that it is unshakable confidence. It is love with a capital L. And I have a support team around me. So I have mentors and my family that they are incredibly supportive. And I think that's important too. Through those moments, having someone have your back to help cheer you on is really important. That's what's helped me to keep going. And there have been times just like, why am I doing this? And I'm like, God, why am I doing this? And then I'm shown and I'm like, oh yeah, of course, that's why.
What is the biggest piece of advice that you could offer anyone who's struggled to find what they want to do with their life? How do you recommend navigating that?
Keep going. Identity, careers, labels, they're transient. This none of this has to last or mean anything. It has to hold as much meaning as you want it to. Just like we can like cut our hair the next day, like it doesn't matter, it grows back. And so you can set out on something and decide to get support. Like I want to have this career, or maybe I decide I want to be married, or maybe I decide that I want to go and leave the country and go move somewhere else. Like you can decide and change your mind. Like nothing is stuck in stone, and the limits are like sunglasses you put on. Take them off, the image around you changes. The way you see the world changes. And so getting a good support team, meaning mentors, friends, guides, someone who's been on that path already to help lead you and encourage you to keep going forward. And just whatever you do, just keep going, keep going, keep going.
Is there anything further that you'd wish to impart on our listeners here on the morning wake up call?
If you are questioning something, get quiet. Focus on your breath. And if you have a pen, start writing. You'll be surprised at what the wisdom within you has to share.
Thank you so much, Lisanne, for
Thank
joining
you.
us today on the morning wake up call, for talking through your career and your life. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Cameron.